Never has there ever been a more opportune time than right now to develop our resilience in a world that offers next to no certainty and challenges around every corner. Yesterday at Breakthrough in Action, we discussed the practice or discipline of fear exposure and stoicism, which allows us to direct our awareness to control and manage our thoughts, emotions, and behavioral patterns so that we can cope and thrive through challenging circumstances. And we learned also that this practice allows us to accept the things that we can't control, take ownership of the things that we can, and to practice gratitude and appreciation in the present awareness. So we talked about 3 very simple interventions or practices that you can take into your everyday life to help enforce this principle or this philosophy. So the first practice we talked about is starting the day with intention, which means not giving in to our habitual impulses of, hitting the snooze button on our alarm, or passing up the gym, or looking at our phones first thing when we wake up to see news, social media, and other people making an impression on our day. Instead, we say no. Instead, we say, today, I choose my intentions. I choose the lens through which I experience the next 24 hours. And keystone habits are a great way to do this. And you could do it with mindfulness or meditation. You could start with journaling exercises, breath work to ground you in the present, or even working out. Things that will set positive momentum and direction throughout your day are crucial because it allows us to intentionally decide. This is how, who, and why I want to show up in all the different aspects of my life. And we make that decision, it is powerful, I promise. Second intervention or practice is cultivating joy. It's taking responsibility for our own happiness and not relying on external forces, circumstances, or environment, or other people to bring us joy. Instead, we cultivate that for ourselves. A great way to do this, one of the best ways to do this, is connection and contribution. Contributing one small act of kindness to someone. Because when we create something of ourselves and extend it outside of ourselves to impact another person, my goodness, that joy, it illuminates the big picture, which overshadows the fear. And the last practice is self-control. I know that doesn't sound very sexy, but I promise that it's just so instrumental in developing our resilience. And the way that we do this is we subject ourselves to moderate amounts of struggle. One example would be physical exertion, or training in the heat or high altitude. A great way of doing this, which everyone can do, is fasting, resisting impulses and cravings. And of course, fear exposure is excellent. And what I mean by that is it's different for everyone depending on what you're resistant or afraid of. So if you're afraid of social interaction, maybe having the courage to write a message to someone, or reaching out to someone. If you're afraid of the ocean, maybe putting on a life jacket and dipping your feet first and then, slowly getting in whilst holding on to something. If you're afraid of riding your bike because you've fallen down, that happened to me when I had an accident. What I did was, in a controlled environment, I slowly got on my bike. And little by little, I developed the skill of exposing myself to that fear. Because what that does is 2 things. First, it disarms the fear of that power. And then second, you can use that power to empower yourself. And when we're able to do that, we change the relationship that we have to challenges. And that is the most important thing about this practice, is because we're learning through positive psychology that our stress with a fear or a challenge is not necessarily because of the trigger or that challenge in particular. It is because of our relationship to it. It's how we've reacted to it in the past. It's the story we've told ourselves about ourselves and that trigger that creates that fear. So when we practice fear exposure, we rewrite the script. So when we have this mindfulness and this self-control, it allows us to switch from habitual, negative thoughts and emotions and behaviors into intentional living. And when we can practice this over time, it really does change the trajectory of our experiences. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you in the next session.